Sam, Maya, Ryan and Emma stood at the edge of Blackwood Trail. A dare. That's how it started. Blackwood was infamous. Haunted, they said. No one dared to enter after dark.
You scared?
Sam asked, grinning at Emma. She clutched her journal. It held local ghost stories.
No.
She said a little too quickly.
Right, and I'm the King of England.
Ryan laughed.
Let's just get this over with.
Maya checked her camera. They stepped onto the path. The woods swallowed them whole. The sunlight vanished. Trees formed a thick canopy overhead. It was unnaturally quiet. No birds sang. No squirrels chattered. Just the sound of their own breathing.
Creepy.
Ryan whispered, breaking the silence.
It's just a forest.
Sam said, though even he sounded a little uneasy. Emma shivered. She pulled her jacket tighter. There was a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. The woods seemed to press in on them, watching, waiting. They reached a fork in the path. Emma stopped.
Wait,
She flipped through her journal.
this is it. This is where the hiker vanished.
What hiker?
Emma read aloud.
Lost on the trail, never seen again. Some say his ghost still searches for the way out.
Just a story.
But what if it's true?
Ryan asked, his voice a little too high. Emma closed the journal.
Let's just stick to the main path.
But the main path was already gone. The woods had closed in around them. They were lost. They walked for what felt like hours, their legs growing heavier with each step. The dense forest seemed to close in around them, the canopy above blocking out most of the light, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The silence was broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and their increasingly panicked breaths. The air was thick with tension, every crunch of leaves underfoot echoing in the oppressive quiet. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves sounded like a whisper. The forest was alive with unseen eyes, watching their every move, making the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end.
Did you hear that? The voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife.
Hear what? Sam's voice was strained, his eyes darting around the darkened woods, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound.
Sam asked, his voice tight with tension. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears.
It sounded like whispering. Maya's voice trembled, her eyes wide with fear as she scanned the darkness.
Maya said, her grip on her camera tightening. She had always been the brave one, the one who laughed in the face of danger, but now even she was on edge. Ryan laughed, but it was a shaky sound. He tried to brush it off, to make light of the situation, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him.
Come on, Maya, don't tell me you're buying into this ghost stuff. Ryan's voice was forced, his attempt at skepticism falling flat.
But even Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees whispering secrets that they couldn't quite hear. Something was out there, lurking in the shadows. There was a presence they could feel but not see, a darkness that seemed to follow them, always just out of sight. They tried to navigate their way out, but the forest seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles. The compass was no help, its needle spinning wildly as if it too was lost. They huddled together, whispering urgently, trying to decide which way to go. Every direction looked the same, the trees blending into an endless maze. Sam pulled out a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, but it only seemed to make the shadows deeper, more menacing. The light revealed nothing but more trees, more shadows, and the ever-present feeling of being watched. Their breaths came in short gasps, the fear almost palpable. They moved cautiously, every step a struggle against the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. The forest was a living entity, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. Maya reached out to touch a tree, her fingers trembling. The bark was rough under her fingertips, grounding her in the reality of the situation. Suddenly they all stopped, their eyes fixed on the same point in the darkness. There was something there, a shape moving between the trees. Their hearts pounded in unison, the fear binding them together. They backed away slowly, not daring to take their eyes off the shadowy figure. And then, as if by some unspoken agreement, they turned and ran. Their feet pounded on the forest floor, the whispers following them, growing louder with each step. They didn't stop, didn't look back, driven by a primal fear that pushed them forward. The forest seemed to close in around them, the darkness becoming almost tangible. Finally, they burst out of the trees, collapsing on the ground, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The whispers faded, the oppressive feeling lifting as they left the forest behind. They looked at each other, relief washing over them. They had made it out, but the memory of the whispers would stay with them forever. As they walked away, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, they knew they would never forget the night. They heard the whispers in the dark. They stumbled upon a clearing. The dense forest suddenly gave way to an open space bathed in sunlight. It was as if they had crossed an invisible threshold from the dark, shadowy woods into a realm of light. The air felt different here, lighter, almost inviting, yet there was an underlying sense of foreboding that none of them could shake off.
In the center stood a dilapidated cabin. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades, maybe even longer. The roof sagged under the weight of years, and the walls seemed to lean inwards, as if the cabin was trying to protect itself from the outside world. Vines and moss had claimed the structure, weaving through the wooden planks and giving it an almost eerie, organic appearance.
Its windows were boarded up, and the once red paint was now a peeling rotten grey. The boards over the windows were nailed haphazardly, some hanging loosely as if they had been pried open and then hastily re-nailed. The paint, which might have once been vibrant and welcoming, now hung in strips, revealing the raw, weathered wood beneath. It was a stark reminder of the passage of time and the relentless grip of nature. Deep scratches, like claw marks, raked across the wooden planks of the door. They were jagged and uneven, as if made in a fit of rage or desperation. The marks were old, the edges softened by time, but they still held a menacing quality. It was as if the cabin had been attacked by some wild beast, or perhaps something even more sinister.
No one's been here for years. The air inside was stale, carrying the scent of decay and neglect. It was clear that whatever had happened here, it had been a long time ago. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wood settling.
Hello? The words seemed to hang in the air, echoing off the walls and then fading into the oppressive silence. It was a tentative greeting, a question, and a plea all rolled into one. The emptiness of the cabin seemed to swallow the sound, making it feel as though the place itself was absorbing their presence.
Ryan called out, his voice echoing eerily in the silence. There was no response, just the hollow reverberation of his own voice bouncing back at him. It was unsettling, as if the forest itself was mocking their intrusion. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, but offering no answers. Only the wind answered, whistling through the trees. It was a mournful sound, like a distant wail, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The leaves rustled softly, creating a symphony of whispers that seemed to carry secrets of the past. It was as if the forest was alive, watching them, waiting for something. Sam pushed open the creaking door. The sound was loud in the stillness, a drawn-out groan that sent shivers down their spines. The door resisted at first, as if it didn't want to be disturbed, but then it gave way, revealing the dark interior of the cabin. The smell of damp wood and decay wafted out, making them hesitate for a moment before stepping inside. The stench of decay hit them like a physical blow. It was overwhelming, a mix of mold, rot, and something else they couldn't quite identify. They covered their noses, trying to block out the smell, but it seemed to cling to the air, seeping into their clothes and skin. It was a stark reminder of the cabin's long abandonment and the passage of time. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light that pierced the gloom. The light filtered through a crack in the boarded-up window, creating a narrow path of illumination that cut through the darkness. The dust swirled lazily in the beam, like tiny stars in a forgotten galaxy. It was a small, almost beautiful detail in the otherwise grim setting. Inside, they found the remains of furniture, rotted and covered in cobwebs. The chairs and tables were barely recognizable, their shapes distorted by years of neglect. Cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes, swaying gently in the draught. It was clear that no one had set foot in this place for a very long time. The furniture seemed to tell a story of a life once lived here. Now, long forgotten, it was like stepping into a nightmare. The darkness seemed to close in around them, the air thick with the weight of the past. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside felt amplified in the oppressive silence. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty space, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. The cabin held its secrets tightly, and they could only wonder what they might uncover. The shadows deepened as dusk approached. The air grew colder, biting at their skin even through their jackets.
I swear I saw figures moving at the edge of the woods.
Their flashlight flickered.
New batteries, anyone?
Ryan joked, but his voice lacked its usual humor. The light sputtered and died, plunging them into darkness.
Something touched my shoulder.
Emma shrieked. Panic surged. They were trapped. The shadows seemed to press in, filled with unseen eyes. Then came the whispering, closer now, surrounding them. It wasn't just the wind, it was voices. Angry, mournful voices.
Something brushed past me.
Sam yelled. Fear, primal and consuming, took hold. They ran. Blindly, desperately, they crashed through the woods. Branches whipped at their faces, thorns tore at their clothes. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop.
Faster, faster!
The whispering followed, urging them on. Something was hunting them in the dark. They burst into a clearing, bathed in the pale light of the rising moon. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, old and imposing. They huddled together, gasping for breath. The whispering faded. The shadows retreated. The stone circle felt different, safe, protected. Exhausted, they huddled together and waited for dawn. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the trees, they felt a glimmer of hope. They were alive. Back in town, they tried to explain, but the words sounded hollow, even to their own ears. No one believed them. The townsfolk exchanged uneasy glances, their faces etched with skepticism. Whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire, and the once familiar faces now seemed distant and cold. The group felt isolated, their experience dismissed as mere figments of imagination. They had ventured into the unknown, and now they were paying the price.
I caught it all on camera. The whispers, the shadows, the terror in our eyes. Every moment felt surreal, as if we were trapped in a nightmare. The forest seemed alive, breathing with an eerie presence that sent shivers down our spines. We thought the camera would be our proof, our way to show the world what we had encountered. But the fear in our eyes, the palpable dread, was all too real.
But when she played it back, there was nothing. Just the sound of the wind and their own ragged breathing. The screen showed only the mundane, the ordinary. The whispers and shadows that had haunted them were conspicuously absent. It was as if the forest had erased its own secrets, leaving behind only the echoes of their fear. The group was left questioning their sanity, wondering if they had imagined it all. Later, alone in her room, Maya thought she heard it again. A whisper, barely audible but chillingly clear. It was a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the forest, a haunting echo that refused to be silenced. She strained to listen, her heart pounding in her chest. The room felt colder, the shadows longer, as if the forest had followed her home. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, and Maya knew she couldn't escape it.
Some trails are better left unexplored. The forest holds its secrets close, guarding them jealously. Those who dare to venture too far may find themselves lost, not just in the woods, but in their own minds. The trails twist and turn, leading to places that defy explanation. The mist hangs heavy, obscuring the path and creating an atmosphere of dread. It's a place where reality blurs with the supernatural, and the line between the two becomes indistinguishable.
The screen went dark. Maya shivered. Some secrets, she realized, are best left buried. The darkness seemed to close in around her, a tangible presence that pressed against her skin. She felt the weight of the forest's secrets, the burden of knowledge that was never meant to be uncovered. The flickering screen was a reminder of the unknown, a portal to a world that was better left undisturbed. Maya knew that some echoes are meant to fade, to be forgotten, lest they consume those